Millionaire mocked his ugly secretary, then she became his goddess. Richard Cole, a powerful millionaire with piercing blue eyes and a reputation for being cold, rarely paid attention to anyone beneath his rank. To him, his secretary Anna was more than a plain woman with messy hair, oversized glasses, and clothes that looked 2 decades old. She was efficient, quiet, and invisible. But fate had a way of turning the tables when pride blinded him. One Friday evening, Richard's business partners invited him to a luxury dinner. At the last minute, his date canceled, leaving him embarrassed. Desperate not to arrive alone, he reluctantly asked Anna to join. "You want me?" she asked, shocked. Richard smirked. "Don't flatter yourself, it's just dinner. Don't make me regret it." She nodded quietly, hiding the storm brewing inside her. Anna spent the next day thinking. For years, she had endured his insults, his indifference, and the mocking stares of others in the office. But deep down, she knew she wasn't the woman they saw. She had buried her true self under layers of modesty and fear. That night, she made a decision. If Richard wanted her at his side, he would see the real Anna. When Richard pulled up in his sleek black car, Anna wasn't at the office entrance as expected. Instead, she stepped out of her apartment, building in Richard's breath caught, gone were the thick glasses and outdated clothes. She wore an elegant dress that shimmered under the city lights, her hair cascading like silk, her confidence glowing. For the first time, Richard couldn't speak. "Shall we?" Anna asked softly, her lips curving into a smile. Richard stammered, fumbling with the car door. His heart raced a feeling foreign to a man who believed he had seen it all. The drive to the restaurant was unusually quiet. He kept stealing glances at her reflection in the window, questioning how the woman he overlooked every day could suddenly command his attention. At the restaurant, heads turned. The other millionaires and their glamorous companions stared in disbelief. Whispers spread across the room. "Who is she? That's his secretary." Impossible. Richard felt pride swell inside him, but also shame. He had treated her as nothing, and now the world saw her as a queen. Dinner became a blur. Richard's partners tried to engage him in conversation, but his eyes never left Anna. She laughed easily, spoke intelligently, and charmed everyone at the table. Even the waiters seemed enchanted. For the first time in years, Richard felt small, not because of money or power, but because he realized how blind he had been. After dinner, as they walked out into the night, Richard finally spoke. "Why didn't you ever show this side of yourself?" Anna stopped, turning to face him. "Because you never cared to look," she said simply. Her words pierced deeper than any blade. He knew she was right. His arrogance had hidden a treasure standing before him. The drive back was different. Richard didn't see a secretary anymore. He saw a woman who had endured, who had strength and beauty beyond measure. He wanted to apologize, to ask for forgiveness, but pride held his tongue. Anna remained calm, knowing her transformation had left its mark. As he dropped her at her apartment, Richard finally managed, "Anna, I don't think I've ever misjudged someone so badly." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's time you start seeing people for who they truly are, not what you think they're worth." With that, she disappeared into the building, leaving the millionaire breathless, shaken, and changed forever. The next morning, Richard arrived at the office earlier than usual, something that never happened. He wanted to see Anna again, to confirm that last night wasn't some strange dream. But when she walked in, she was back in her plain work clothes, hair tied up, glasses on. Still, her eyes carried the same quiet fire he had witnessed the night before. "Coffee, Mr. Cole?" she asked, in her usual soft tone. For the first time, Richard hesitated. He stared at her, as if trying to peel back the disguise. "Anna, last night, why hide yourself again?" She raised her brows. "Because this is who I am here. You only saw what you wanted to see." Her words unsettled him more than he cared to admit. Throughout the day, Richard found himself distracted. Every call, every meeting felt meaningless compared to the image of Anna stepping out of her apartment like a goddess. For the first time in years, business wasn't enough to consume him. He wanted something else: her attention, her respect, maybe even her forgiveness. By lunchtime, he couldn't resist. Richard leaned out of his office. "Anna, have dinner with me again tonight." She didn't even look up from her desk. "I have plans." No secretary had ever spoken to him like that. Richard blinked, shocked. "Plans?" She simply nodded, continuing to type. He walked back into his office, humbled. Later that evening, Richard found himself waiting outside her building anyway, restless and curious. When Anna appeared, she wasn't alone. A group of friends greeted her warmly, their laughter filling the air. She looked radiant, alive, free. Richard realized she had an entire world outside of him, a world he had never bothered to notice. For the first time in his life, the millionaire felt jealousy burn in his chest. Watching her walk away, arm in arm with people who valued her, he wondered if he had already lost her. She didn't need him, he needed her. The realization struck like lightning. The following week, Richard tried again. He started small, complimenting her work, actually listening when she spoke, even asking about her day. Anna, however, remained professional, her guard firmly up. She had seen his arrogance for years. She wouldn't let one dinner erase the scars. At night, Richard replayed her words. "You never cared to look." They haunted him. For the first time in decades, the man who thought he had everything realized he might be missing the one thing he truly needed. But how could he convince her his intentions were real? Driven by an unfamiliar desperation, Richard began to change not just toward Anna, but toward everyone. His employees noticed. He treated the janitor with respect, held doors open, and even apologized when he was wrong. Whispers spread, "Mr. Cole isn't the same anymore." And the truth was, he wasn't. But Anna wasn't so easily swayed. One evening, as she gathered her things, Richard said quietly, "Anna, I want to take you somewhere that means something. Not a business dinner, not for appearances, just us." She studied him carefully. For the first time, she saw vulnerability in his eyes, and that terrified her even more than his arrogance ever had. Anna hesitated, clutching her purse. She had dreamed, once, long ago, of Richard noticing her. But dreams had faded into years of being overlooked. "Why now?" she asked, her voice steady. Richard's throat tightened. "Because last night, I finally saw you." Anna's lips curved in a sad smile. "No, Richard, you saw what you wanted to see. The question is, are you ready to see me every day?" That question lingered like a challenge. Richard spent nights replaying it, realizing he didn't even know her favorite color, her dreams, her story. For all his wealth, he was poor in the things that mattered. Determined, he began asking, not just Anna, but everyone around him. Slowly, his world, once filled only with profits and power, began to feel more human. Anna watched from a distance. She noticed the way he treated people differently. Now how he stopped to thank the receptionist, how he carried files himself instead of barking orders. She wondered if this was an act or if something in him had truly shifted. For her own sake, she hoped it was real. One evening, Richard appeared at her desk with 2 steaming cups of tea. "You mentioned once your mother made chamomile when you were sick," he said quietly. Anna blinked, stunned. She had told him that story years ago, thinking he hadn't listened. Her heart softened, but her guard remained. Nice memory. But gestures fade. "Richard, people don't." Determined to prove himself, Richard began including Anna in conversations with clients, not as a secretary, but as an equal. She surprised everyone with her wit and insight. Some whispered she was the reason deals went smoothly. Richard, however, only smiled. For once, he wanted the spotlight to shine on her. But the more Anna shined, the more others began to notice. A wealthy investor named Marcus invited her to lunch. Richard felt a surge of jealousy, though he hid it behind a polite smile. That night, he couldn't sleep, wondering if Anna might choose someone who had never belittled her. The next day, Anna walked into Richard's office unexpectedly. "I need to know something," she said firmly. "If I weren't your secretary, if I had nothing to offer your business, would you still want me by your side?" The silence stretched painfully. Richard finally admitted, "I don't know who I was before, but now, yes, 1,000 times yes." Her eyes searched his, looking for cracks of insincerity. To her surprise, she saw none. For the first time, Richard wasn't speaking as the cold-hearted millionaire. He was speaking as a man stripped bare. And that frightened her more than anything, because she realized she might be falling. That weekend, Richard invited her to a small art gallery instead of a fancy dinner. The paintings told stories of struggle, resilience, and beauty hidden in pain. As Anna stood in front of a portrait of a woman rising from ashes, Richard whispered, "This reminds me of you." She turned to him, stunned by the sincerity in his voice. For the first time, Anna let the walls around her heart crack just a little. "If you're serious about this, Richard, you'll have to prove it every day, not with money, but with who you choose to be." Richard nodded without hesitation. "Then let me spend the rest of my life proving it." The news spread quickly. The cold-hearted millionaire was suddenly spending evenings with his plain secretary. Whispers turned into gossip, gossip into ridicule. Some employees smirked behind Anna's back, convinced she was chasing Richard's wealth, but Richard didn't care. For the first time, he felt alive, and he wanted the world to know Anna was the reason. One night, at a charity gala, Richard walked in with Anna by his side. She wore a modest, yet elegant dress, her confidence radiant. The crowd froze. A few women scoffed. "She's just his secretary." One sneered. Richard overheard and, without hesitation, wrapped his arm around Anna. "She's the reason I'm here tonight. Without her, none of this matters." Gasps rippled through the room. But not everyone was pleased. Marcus, the wealthy investor who had shown interest in Anna, cornered her during the gala. "You think he'll change for you?" he said smoothly. "Men like Richard don't change. When he's bored, he'll be forgotten." Anna's jaw tightened. "Maybe, but I'll take honesty and growth over empty promises." She walked away, leaving Marcus seated. "Richard, watching from across the room, realized something. Anna didn't need him to protect her. She could hold her own. That strength made his feelings grow even deeper. For once he didn't want to own or control, he wanted to earn. That thought both terrified and thrilled him. The following weeks tested Richard's resolve. Business rivals began spreading rumors that he was blinded by a gold digger. One tabloid even printed a cruel headline, "Millionaire falls for ugly duckling." Anna saw it, her chest tightening with old insecurities. But when she handed the paper to Richard, he tore it in half. "They don't see you, but I do." Still, the pressure weighed heavily on Anna. At times, doubt whispered in her mind, was Richard truly changing, or was this just another phase for a man who always got what he wanted? Late at night, she looked in the mirror and asked herself if she could risk her heart. Richard sensed her distance and decided to act differently. Instead of grand gestures, he began showing up in small ways, carrying her files, walking her to her car, even fixing the flickering light in her office. Each act chipped away at the walls Anna had built, reminding her that true change is shown, not spoken. One rainy evening, as Anna struggled with her umbrella, Richard appeared with his jacket. Without a word, he draped it over her shoulders. She looked up at him, water dripping down his face, his eyes softer than she had ever seen. "I'm not asking you to believe me today," he whispered, "but let me keep proving it tomorrow." Something inside Anna finally cracked. For years she had hidden her heart, fearing rejection and ridicule. Now, standing in the rain with the man who once dismissed her, she realized he was no longer the same. He was changing for her, because of her. And that terrified her even more, because she was falling, too. That night, Anna couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the look in Richard's eyes, the sincerity in his voice. For the first time, she wondered, maybe this wasn't just about a millionaire seeing beauty in his secretary. Maybe this was about two broken people finding the courage to be seen, truly seen, by each other. Just when things seemed to be changing, Richard's board of directors called an emergency meeting. They accused him of being distracted and warned his personal choices were damaging the company's image. One man sneered openly, "You've built an empire, Cole. Don't let it crumble because of a secretary." Richard's jaw clenched. "Her name is Anna," he said coldly. That night, Richard confessed the confrontation to Anna. She listened silently, her face unreadable. "They're right about one thing," she finally said. "You could lose everything. Are you willing to risk it?" Richard didn't hesitate. "I'd rather lose millions than lose you." His words shook her because she sensed he meant them. But the threats weren't just whispers. Rivals began targeting Richard's deals, sabotaging contracts, spreading lies to investors. Every loss seemed to circle back to one thing, his relationship with Anna. She felt the weight of it, guilt gnawing at her. "Maybe I should walk away," she whispered one night. "Before you lose it all." Richard took her hands, firm yet gentle. "If I lose everything but keep you, Anna, I still win. Don't you see? You're not my weakness. You're the reason I've finally found strength." Tears stung her eyes. For the first time, she believed he wasn't chasing an illusion, he was fighting for her. Meanwhile, Marcus the investor who once pursued Anna seized the opportunity. He spread rumors that Anna was manipulating Richard to gain power. He even tried to bribe an employee to plant false evidence against her. But Anna, sharp and resilient, caught wind of the plot. Instead of running, she confronted Marcus directly. "You think I'm after his money?" she said, eyes blazing. "I've worked harder than anyone in that office, and I've never asked for more than respect. You wouldn't understand that." Marcus laughed bitterly. "Respect doesn't buy diamonds." Anna's voice rose. "Maybe not, but it builds something money never could trust." Her courage inspired Richard even more. Together, they gathered proof of Marcus's underhanded tactics and presented it to the board. The room was stunned into silence. Richard stood tall beside Anna. "This is the woman you called a distraction. She just saved the company from a traitor." Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then stronger. But victory came at a price. Marcus was removed, yet whispers still lingered. High society continued to sneer at Anna, calling her an ugly secretary unworthy of a millionaire. Each cruel word cut deep, but Richard refused to let her stand alone. At every event, he introduced her proudly. "This is Anna, the woman who changed my life." Slowly, Anna began to see the change wasn't an act. Richard laughed more, listened more, and carried himself with humility she'd never imagined. She found herself softening, leaning into the bond they'd built through storms of judgment and betrayal. She realized she wasn't just surviving anymore, she was loved. One evening, as they walked through the city lights, Richard stopped abruptly. "Anna," he said, voice trembling, "for years I thought I had everything, but until you, I had nothing. You turned my empire into a home. Will you let me spend my life proving that to you?" He opened a small box inside, a simple, elegant ring. Anna stared at the ring, her breath catching in her throat. It wasn't extravagant, not the dazzling diamond everyone would expect from a millionaire. Instead, it was modest, simple, and pure. "Why this?" she whispered. Richard's eyes softened. Because it's not about showing the world, it's about showing you. I want you, not a trophy, not an image, just you. Her heart raced. All her life, she had been overlooked, dismissed, treated as invisible. Now, here stood the man who once ignored her, asking her to be the center of his world. Tears welled in her eyes. "Richard," she whispered, her voice breaking, "I don't care about money. I just need to know you won't stop fighting to be the man you're becoming." Richard took her trembling hands. "Then that's my vow, just for tonight, but every day I wake up, I'll keep choosing you. I'll keep choosing us." For the first time, Anna believed love wasn't just a fairy tale, it was standing right in front of her. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes, Richard, yes." The moment was raw, vulnerable, and beautiful. No flashing cameras, no grand spectacle, just the souls finally seeing each other. When Richard slid the ring onto her finger, Anna felt something she never thought possible. She felt worthy. Not because of wealth or appearance, but because she was loved for who she truly was. News of their engagement spread like wildfire. Some scoffed, some sneered, but many were stunned into silence. "She must be after his fortune," critics whispered. But when reporters pressed Richard, he smiled proudly. "My fortune was empty without her. She's not marrying my money. She's marrying me." The honesty in his words silenced many doubters. At their wedding, Anna walked down the aisle in a simple gown, her natural beauty glowing brighter than any jewel. Richard's eyes never left hers, as if the crowd around them had disappeared. Guests wept openly, struck by the sincerity between them. This wasn't a Millionaire's display, it was a love story reborn from ashes. In the years that followed, Richard kept his vow. He changed board policies, treated employees with dignity, and built charities in Anna's name to empower women overlooked by society. Anna, once dismissed as plain, became a symbol of resilience and grace. She wasn't just Richard's wife, she was his partner, his compass, his equal. One evening, sitting on their porch, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Anna whispered, "Do you ever regret it?" "Choosing me over the world's expectations," Richard chuckled, pulling her close. "Anna, you were never the lesser choice. You were the only choice. Without you, I'd still be a rich man with an empty life." She rested her head on his shoulder, tears of quiet joy slipping down her cheeks. In that moment, she realized her story wasn't about being ugly or beautiful. It was about being seen, valued, and loved beyond appearances. She had become his goddess not by changing herself, but by daring to be herself. And so, the millionaire who once mocked his secretary discovered the greatest treasure wasn't in his bank account, it was in the heart of the woman who taught him humility, strength, and love. Together, they built a life richer than any fortune, proving that sometimes the ugliest duckling is simply a goddess waiting to be seen.